Marketplace is supported by TreviPay, a managed B2B payments platform for global brands, offering zero-touch AR plus tools to help reduce DSO at TreviPay.com.
Well, here we are. Another Friday, another shutdown, another where do things go from here? From American Public Media, this is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Odoo, dedicated to providing software designed to scale with businesses. Odoo's programs for manufacturing, accounting, and more aim to provide building blocks for creating a custom software suite. Odoo, what businesses need. And by Mercury. Mercury is a fintech that helps entrepreneurs do more with their money. They offer banking, credit cards, invoicing, and more, all in one place. Learn more at Mercury.com.
In Los Angeles, I'm Kyle Rizdal. It is Friday today. This one is the 3rd of October. It is good as it always is to have you along, everybody. One does not, I believe, need to recap the state of play of the politics of this economy. So we will not. But the shutdown is not without its economic effects, so that's where we're going to start. Sudeep Reddy is the Washington bureau chief for MSNBC. Heather Long is the chief economist at Navy Federal Credit Union. Hey, you two.
Hi, Kai.
Hey, Kai.
Heather
Hey,
Long,
Kai.
we begin with you. Obviously, we did not get the September jobs report today. We are probably going to miss our next reading on inflation. As the chief economist in the room, what is your level of worry?
I mean, it's...
Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah, it's unsettling, right? This hasn't happened since 2013, and I know people keep saying this, but it's true. It feels like you're trying to fly an airplane or drive a car blindfolded. And sure, you can do that for a little while, but it just feels like, why would you want to do that? Why do you want to have a blindfold on when you're trying to maneuver this economy right now? And then I think even more importantly, there's a human element to this. There's the sort of, how are we in this again? But also, look, over 600,000 workers are furloughed right now. Many of them are concerned that they're going to be laid off or could be laid off. You know, at Navy Federal Credit Union, we extend no interest loans to workers. And I can tell you that we've had, huge uptick, way more than we had in 2019. People are worried.
Sudeep, all of what Heather said being true, it is also reasonably true that if this is a short-ish shutdown, it is merely a macroeconomic ripple, yes?
That is true. We've learned this over and over again, that shutdowns make us all depressed, of course. They don't speak well about how we run our government. They do work sometimes for the messaging for either party, and clearly this case it's Democrats who have a view on healthcare. Before, it was budget deficits with Republicans. It does work in terms of messaging, but it does not really have a macroeconomic effect. It's a micro effect on the workers who are furloughed, on the contractors who do not get back pay after a while. There are lots of areas of damage from a shutdown at an individual level, but it does not really have this big effect, and it's usually a thing that we can look back on as barely a blip.
Heather, in your capacity at Navy Federal, you've got access to all kinds of private data. What are you looking at to give you some sense of, maybe peeking out from behind that blindfold you were talking about?
Yeah, we're all trying to figure it out. We do have millions of accounts that have direct deposit data from the government and from private sector employers. So far, we continue to see everything come in as expected this week, but we're monitoring it closely. Obviously, everybody paid a lot of attention this week to the ADP jobs report. But at the end of the day, even ADP is monitoring 26 million employees in an economy that has 160 million. So there's just a totally different magnitude.
Sudeep, we had Austan Goolsbee, the president of the Chicago Fed, on the program this week. We talked about a bunch of stuff, one of which was the data thing that we've just been talking about, the three of us. The other one, though, was where he sits now on the dual mandate, whether he's more worried about price stability, inflation, or the labor market, jobs. And he came down pretty solidly on being more worried about inflation. And I guess I wonder what you think about that.
If you're a Fed official and you've been trying to get inflation to a certain level, say 2%, and you're consistently above that, you have to continue to look at that and say, okay, well, we're not where we should be with the dual mandate. But a lot of Fed officials are also looking at the job market and seeing that it's not really in great shape in terms of hiring, in terms of job creation. It's not falling apart. We know that from jobless claims before the shutdown that it's fine in that sense. And so the lack of firing means it's probably going to be okay. But that none of that means that inflation is going to come down naturally, especially when we're still feeling the effects of tariffs ripple through the economy. And so you've got to be looking at that with some level of concern and caution if you're at the Federal Reserve anywhere in the system.
Heather, I'd be curious about your take on that same question.
I was surprised how much you leaned into inflation in your interview. I do think the data we saw this week, again, seeing the JOLTS data, the job openings data, the number that really stands out to me is the hiring rate. And to see that fall to 3.2, the lowest since the end of the Great Recession era, 2011 period.
Sorry to interrupt. Take a second and explain why the hiring data is important to you.
Because it just reiterates how frozen this labor market is. And when we compare that, this notion that we'd be at a 3.2% really low hiring rate, the last time we saw that was in a period when the unemployment rate was more like 7%. And so that's where I think the reality on the ground for a lot of Americans, it doesn't feel like a 4% or 4.3% unemployment economy right now.
Right. All right. So the both of you get this next question. Sudeep, you get to go first. Sorry. But it's the question I started with. Where do things go from here? Because the Trump administration has changed this economy in substantive ways in the past 9, whatever it is, months. If the director of the OMB, Russ Vought, and the president are true to their word, it will be even more change during this shutdown. Now what happens?
Now we wait, right? We need to actually wait on so many fronts. We've been waiting on the tariff front to see what happens. Yeah. We've been waiting on the immigration front to see what happens when we don't bring in as many workers at the high end and the low end of the labor market. All of these things are experiments that we didn't necessarily think we'd be running, and we're running them all right now. And we don't really have the precedent to know how the economy reacts to it, because that's just not how this has been set up. And so when you're making such fundamental changes, it just takes time, and it will probably be many months and maybe even years to see the full effects of it.
Heather, 30 seconds, same question. Now what happens?
I think, look, in the coming months and into 2026, we're probably going to be able to avoid a recession in the worst case scenario. I think the AI boom continues to be a huge driver for the economy and obviously the markets, but it doesn't mean that things are going to feel great. I think consumer sentiment is going to remain really in the dumps. The middle class is feeling squeezed. The reality is inflation will be around 3% heading into 2026, and wage growth probably won't be that high. You do the math.
I don't like to do math. Heather Long at Navy Federal, Sudeep Reddy at MSNBC. Thanks, you two.
Thanks, Guy.
Thanks, Guy.
Have a nice weekend. Wall Street today, a little choppy to end the week, actually. We'll have the details when we do the numbers. Government shutdown or no, there is data about this economy that does not come from federal professionals. Next Friday, for instance, we'll get the regular reading on consumer sentiment from the University of Michigan. That's a survey. The good people in Ann Arbor actually ask people about things. Of course, you can also get a sense of how consumers are feeling by looking at what they're doing, specifically what they are spending their money on. Marketplace's Carla Javier took a look at one particular slice of that spending, restaurants.
First, let's look at fast food places. Dean Baker at the Center for Economic and Policy Research says it's the right place to start.
If you look at fast food restaurants, that's likely reflecting what's going on with ordinary workers.
So not people with high incomes or stock portfolio or real estate gains to fall back on. Baker observes that fast food spending isn't what it used to be.
What happens in 224 and then into this year, it really slows down. It basically stagnates.
So chains are making moves to draw in more traffic, says Michael Halen at Bloomberg Intelligence.
Offer discounts, add cheaper items to the menu, things of that nature to kind of attract people to come in. You're not going to see much menu price decreases in this business.
Because between inflation and labor costs, margins are tight. In surveys and at conferences, restaurants report that deals bring in about a quarter or so of their traffic, says Sarah Senator at Bank of America.
What's really been the driver of transactions, though, have been more, I would say, innovation and brand activation.
Like Minecraft Happy Meals and Chipotle's Adobo Ranch Dip. Senator sees parallels with 2009 during the Great Recession, with one key difference.
Full-service restaurants have actually been holding up better. That kind of runs counter to what you would typically expect to see in a period of economic stress.
Which she attributes, in part, to those higher income customers. Welcome to the K-shaped economy. I'm Carla Javier for Marketplace.
And you're listening to WBEZ. I'm Alex Keefe, and there's something very, very important we want to tell you right now. Everything you're hearing, Marketplace, All Things Considered, programs you're going to hear later tonight in WBEZ, all of this is at risk right now because we lost our federal funding earlier this week after decades of being supported with your tax dollars. But your donation of just a few dollars a month will help safeguard the independent news that you trust. We're asking you to make your affordable monthly gift at wbez.org/donate or call 888-915-9239. I'm Alex Keefe. I'm here with Dave McKinney. Hey, Dave.
Alex, how are you?
You know, I'm doing.
You're doing? So am I.
I'm doing. Friday night, I think we're doing okay.
Well, I'm going to pick up on your riff off your risk part here because that's what's going on here. The news that you depend on, it's at risk unlike it's ever been before. I mean, we were expecting here at WBEZ to get $3 million in federal funding, and guess what? The check never came. That would have paid for about 30 days worth of news and reporting, and it's gone right now. So imagine, if the money that you set aside at home there for your car payment or for, your pick something, your utility bill, your grocery bill, it's gone. So what we're doing right now is we're trying to make that up, $3 million, and we need you to help us with that.
That's exactly right. We're asking you to become a monthly member right now at wbez.org/donate. All of this happened because Congress voted to claw back money for public media in America that had already appropriated. So they decided to do it, and then they later came back and said, no, we're not going to do that right now. That's had a big effect on the public media industry, including WBEZ. But the good news is, at this point of transformation, we have an opportunity, and I know it's something we could come together and do as a community to support public media and support independent, fact-based, accurate journalism at a time when all of those things are incredibly important. So please help us take a giant step forward by donating $20 or $30 a month if that's in your budget. Sign up at wbez.org/donate or call 888-915-9239.
I mean, we're looking to hear from 65 listeners in the next 17 minutes. And we have to pick up the pace right now. It's a Friday afternoon. We're all closing out the week right now, and we still have a goal to meet, and we're falling short at the moment. You can help right now, and it's not easy to be in front of this microphone begging for money or asking for money. And so what I want to tell you is, first off, thank you for listening to us, and thank you for thinking about reaching in your pocket and calling us or going online to help donate. It makes a huge difference. But what you're doing also is helping support your community. If you and your neighbors have access to reliable, trustworthy information about what's going on at City Hall in Springfield, with this immigration enforcement action that has just sort of taken hold over Chicago and the suburbs, you can get that information from us, and it secures deeper local reporting on all of this. So be a monthly donor at WBEZ. That's the best way to really help, advance this cause of getting truth to the masses. Sign up at wbez.org/donate or call 888-915-9239.
Again, we're looking for, let's call it about 65 listeners here before the end of this hour to become members of WBEZ, monthly members. Help build in that sustainability at WBEZ.org/donate. You can secure the future for Chicago stories and for quality local journalism in the Chicago region. Become a member at WBEZ.org/donate or at 888-915-9239.
Let's do the numbers. Dow Industrial's up 238 points today, about 0.5%, 46,758. The Nasdaq subtracted 63 points, just shy of 0.3%, closed at 22,780. The S&P 500 basically flat, 67.15. For the 5 cent, the S&P 500 added 1.1%. Reuters is reporting that the United States Army is not happy with a battlefield communication system upgrade developed in part by Palantir Technologies. A memo from the chief of technology in the Army reportedly says it's full of, quote, fundamental security vulnerabilities. So, too, was Palantir's stock today, down 7.5%. Bonds down, yield on the 10-year T-note went up just a little bit, 4.12%. You're listening to Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Solidigm. Today's AI ambitions require a different approach to storage. Solidigm offers solid-state storage solutions optimized for AI with higher capacities, greater speed, and energy efficiency. StorageForAI.com. And by Progressive Insurance. Progressive is currently looking for individuals in a variety of career fields who are interested in building a career and joining an inclusive and unique culture. More information, including application, at progressive.com/careers.
You're listening to Marketplace here on WBEZ. I'm Mabel Lara. Coming up at 5 o'clock, it's All Things Considered.
WBEZ is supported by the University of Illinois System, fueling economic development and supplying a workforce ready for tomorrow's challenges to build a stronger, more prosperous Illinois for all. Learn more at uillinois.edu.
WBEZ is supported by Michigan Technological University, where students across 9 undergraduate degree programs lead the way to tomorrow's advances in robotics and autonomous systems. Learn more at mtu.edu/robotics. It's 88 degrees now at O'Hare, it's 79 in Wilmette, and we have 89 degrees in Forest Park. Let's head back to Marketplace on WBEZ.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kai Ryssdal. If you are unclear about what's going on with TikTok, yeah, you and me both. The video-based social platform has been in limbo for going on a year and a half now. The latest chapter came last week when President Trump signed an executive order that could, emphasis here on could, pave the way for TikTok to come under control of American companies aligned with the president. It does have to be pointed out, but that would let the app keep operating here. Whether that happens, again, up in the air, it has been a long, strange trip so far, much of which and more is the subject of a new book from Forbes reporter Emily Baker White. It's called Every Screen on the Planet. Welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me.
With the understanding that you just wrote a 330-page book on this, could you, in appropriate radio broadcast length, give us the TikTok origin story, would you?
Yeah. TikTok is one of many apps that grew out of what's known as an app factory, a big tech giant in China called ByteDance. ByteDance was founded by a man named Zhang Yiming, who many people see as sort of one of the founding fathers of the recommendations algorithm. And TikTok rose to power on its ability to predict what you next want to see, largely using the cues that you're giving the app, revealing your preferences rather than stating your preferences to it.
So that's like Reels, or not Reels actually, because that's a different app, but videos that you like or share or whatever, right? And that tells the algorithm what you want to know, right?
Yeah, but even more subtle than that, just where you linger a little bit before swiping to the next video. What brings you back to the app, what makes you rage quit the app, things that you don't even think are signals to the algorithm became a really important part of how TikTok came to seem to know you.
Right. And that actually goes a long way to answering this next question, but I'm going to need you to flesh it out. This is a very controversial platform. How come?
Yeah. So what has made TikTok different from the other tech giants that we know, such as your YouTube, your Instagram, your Facebook, is that TikTok was built by and created by a Chinese company. And people are concerned about that for two primary reasons. One, they worried that the Chinese government, which has tons of control over Chinese companies, could force TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, to either spy on Americans, hoovering up data about what our eyes linger on, etc. Or they worried that the Chinese government might force ByteDance to subtly change the mix of messages that we see on TikTok to seed propaganda or turn us against each other. And those two parallel concerns are sort of the core of the concern about TikTok that you have heard about for the last 5 or so years.
We should probably point out here that you actually have been surveilled by this company. They have looked at your data to try to figure out who you were talking to about what they were doing.
They sure did. I wrote a series of stories about the company, including a story based on a whole bunch of leaks from inside the company. That freaked the company out. A group of people who were responsible for investigating leaks made the terrible decision that the best way to figure out who was leaking to me was for them to pull data off of my TikTok app to see physically where I was, to see if I was physically near the devices of any ByteDance employees, on the theory that they could then figure out who was meeting with me. This didn't help them figure out who was meeting with me, but it did sort of show the worst case scenario that a lot of people were worried about. Some of the people who pulled my data were actually physically in China. And if they did this to me, which is like not really very scary, but very, very dumb of them, they could have done it in a way that's much scarier. They could have done it to American service members. They could have done it to Chinese dissidents living overseas. And that's not what happened, but it showed that people's concern about that was legitimate.
It terrifying though that is, your reaction to it amused me. You were a little disappointed in them. You were like, you guys, come on, be better, would you?
I was totally disappointed in them. Like, it just felt like a massive unforced error. Like, what were you thinking? Truly, what were you thinking? This is exactly what you're telling the world will not happen. You will not do this. Like, come on.
So let's get to the current state of play, about which you know far more than I do. But I am going to read back to you a thing you wrote in Forbes the other day. First sentence of which is, after years of unsuccessful negotiations, TikTok's Chinese parent company ByteDance appears to finally have found a White House it can sweet talk. Where do things stand, and what did you mean by that?
Yeah, so for years, TikTok and ByteDance have been trying to convince the White House, various White Houses, but whoever's in the White House. Not just this one, right?
Yeah, not just this one. That's important.
They were trying to convince the first Trump White House, then they were trying to convince the Biden White House, and now they came back to Trump 2.0. They've been trying to convince them that the way to assuage the national security fears is not to force ByteDance to sell TikTok entirely, but to put in place a mitigation plan where ByteDance sort of separates some parts of TikTok to some degree, and essentially a series of sort of ethical walls, security walls that keeps American data safe from people in China. Eventually, the Biden administration, they looked at this deal and they said at the end of the day, we don't think this can work. We don't think this is enough separation. And it appears that parts of what ByteDance and TikTok were pitching have come back in this deal that they are now trying to work out with Trump and Vance.
So what do you think? You're the expert.
I'm going to give a really annoying answer to that question, which is that we need to know more about the deal. Right now, ByteDance, the Chinese parent company, will keep control of the algorithm that powers the For You page. They'll keep control over that recommendations algorithm.
And
now,
that's a big deal. That's a big deal, right?
It's a huge deal.
Yeah.
And that's been a huge deal in negotiations for years because the Chinese government won't allow them to sell it.
Right.
There are a lot of different types of software licenses. This new TikTok is going to license the algorithm from ByteDance. Until we know what kind of license we're talking about, you know, JD Vance says he's satisfied and he's seen the details of the deal, but I haven't. And so I just have many questions.
To the title of this book and then the actual last page. TikTok is, if not literally, then very nearly on every screen on the planet, right? It's just everywhere.
Yeah.
And it is that rare company that has superseded national borders and has become sort of a transnational thing. And so I go to the last sentence of this book, which says in literally the last words, President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping have defined this app's future. It is now the subject of geostrategic conversation.
At very least, geostrategic conversation. I mean, I think it is the subject of negotiations between the two companies. And that's another place where they say there's a framework of the deal that's been agreed to.
Yeah, framework.
Concepts of a plan do not a plan make.
That's
and
right.
so I want to be clear here that we don't have an executed contract agreement yet. That said, yeah, Trump and Xi Jinping are only going to approve this deal if they ultimately think it's in their interests. And so whatever happens to TikTok in its next iteration is happening with the express blessing of those two men. And that's a really important way to think about this app that has so many eyeballs and so many people's attention for so many minutes every day.
It's an amazing new book by Emily Baker White. It's called Every Screen on the Planet, The War Over TikTok. Emily, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much. This was great.
And you're listening to All Things Considered here on WBEZ, and I have some very important news to share. All the things you're hearing right now are at risk of going away, changing in the future because of some seismic changes in the way that public media is funded. I'm Alex Keefe. I'm here with Dave McKinney this evening. We're talking, of course, about the loss of federal funding in public media all around the country. We got our last check from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting earlier this week. That's a $3 million hole every year that's going to be happening. So we're looking forward to the future so that we can make sure that we're solid and performing so that we can give you the independent journalism you need. We're about two-thirds of the way there during this fall membership drive. We're asking you to make a donation to become a monthly member at wbez.org/donate or at 888-915-9239.
I mean, one of the things that your donation helps us do here is cover the news. I mean, it seems like it's an obvious thing. Mm-hmm. For anybody who's been paying attention to the news, there's a lot going on in Broadview right now with these the ICE and the enforcement actions that they're doing, immigration. We have a team of reporters out there that is pretty much there nonstop, and there's all sorts of chaos there. There are rubber bullets flying everywhere. There's tear gas everywhere. I mean, covering the news is not always a safe job to do. And I'm bringing all this up just to say that, you know, your support of WBEZ helps us keep doing that. And, you know, I know those reporters that go out there to the scene of that chaotic situation there, they're all taking safety kits with them. And I mean, your donation could be, you know, something as simple as helping pay for one of those safety kits. It makes a big difference. The resources that you can help us with make a difference in how we cover the news. And we're turning to you to close this gap that you talked about, Al, this $3 million that was created by these federal funding cuts. Public radio's greatest strength is you. There's no other way to put it. And you can help us overcome these cuts. And if you give now, just take pride in knowing that you're shaping a stronger tomorrow for WBEZ. I mean, that's just true. I mean, I look out at a newsroom here that has some empty desks. I mean, we would like to fill those desks, and that's where we turn to you for support. It only takes a few minutes to make a monthly gift. You can go online, wbez.org/donate, super easy, or reach into your pocket, grab your phone, just hit this number, 888-915-9239. I'll say it one more time slowly, 888-915-9239. Talk to a live human being. What you do, anything you give us will be helpful.
We're looking to hear from 55 more listeners in just the next couple of minutes here. That might seem pretty steep, but there are thousands of people hearing our voices right now, even though it's a Friday night. 55 more people. We're at risk of coming up short this hour, so please become a monthly member. You can help right now. It takes just a couple, 2-3 minutes to become a member at wbez.org/donate or become a monthly member at wbez.org/donate or become a monthly member by calling again 888-915-9239.
You know, we're seeing giving levels of all shapes and sizes today. I mean,